10 famous examples of people who fake their own death. Death can be a scary and uncertain reality. Needless to say, it is one that all of us will have to face at some point or another. For the people who the dead leave behind, the reactions, while they tend to depend on the deceased person in question, are as good as an indicator as any in terms of telling us what people really thought about the person while they were alive. Unfortunately, most of us won't actually be here to see what those reactions will be, because we'll be dead. However, some people manage to be around to actually get an idea of what it might be like to watch people react to their death, without actually dying. Some people are just clever enough to shock people by getting them to initially have that feeling, only to reveal, or to have it revealed by someone else, that they were faking it the whole time. Various people have different reasons for actually doing something that is often seen in movies, but rarely in a successful manner in real life. Yet what all these types of people have in common is that they will forever be remembered in history for having pulled it off. Here are just 10 famous examples of people who faked their own deaths and their motives for doing it. Number 1. John Stonehouse. When he was first accused of being a spy for Czechoslovakia, this UK minister in Prime Minister Harold Wilson's government managed to refute these claims. However, that didn't stop the British public at the time from having deep suspicions as a result of the allegations. As a result of the damage this inflicted on his mental health, along with a series of failed business dealings, he fled to Australia and left his clothes lying near the beach to make it look as if he had drowned. However, while he was initially successful in getting people to think he was deceased, it was not long before people discovered the truth, and he was eventually sent back to the UK to answer for criminal allegations related to his dealings in business. Number 2. Arkady Babichenko. On May 29th of last year, The Guardian reported that this Russian journalist had been shot dead after having written some unflattering statements about Vladimir Putin's regime. However, within a day, they were forced to update the story after he turned out to be very much alive and well. During the lead up to this incident, the Kremlin had been planning to actually kill him, and with the help of some allies in Ukraine, he was able to trick the Russians, and much of the world media, into thinking that he was actually dead. As it turned out, this trick may have been instrumental in saving his actual life from this very real Russian assassination plot, so he can live to write another day. Number 3. Ken Casey. While he is perhaps best known as the novelist behind One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, he is also famous for his attempt to trick people into thinking he was deceased over pending criminal charges. While the prohibition on marijuana is slowly but surely fading away in 2019, the mere usage of this narcotic led to this influential author to choose between whether or not to face potential jail time or to hoax people into thinking he was dead. At first, his staged suicide was enough to trick the news reporters, but it didn't take long for the authorities to realise that it was all an act, and he was ultimately caught in Mexico and sent to jail for 5 months. Number 4. Violet Charlesworth. A magnificent wealthy heiress. Having ventured out into the world of trading stocks, a person such as this almost certainly would have plenty of money to take with her into this venture, except for the fact that she really didn't. The reality was she was faking her image as an heiress, and was trading with money she didn't really have. So once people caught on and realised that she was lying, she faked her death in a car crash and left people believing she was truly gone. Until, of course, she was found alive and well in Scotland. It was after this failed attempt at deceiving the authorities that she stood trial for her financial crimes and deception, of which there was plenty. Number 5. Aleister Crowley. Dubbed the wickedest man in the world during this time, this controversial British occultist was the subject of enormous scandal after using his dark charisma to deceive a young 19-year-old woman, over 30 years younger than him, into having a sexual affair with him that was questionable at best. In the wake of this scandal, he was led down the path of successfully hoaxing people into thinking that he had committed suicide, quite some time before his actual death. Nearly 100 years later, he remains one of the most elaborate and successful con artists in history when it comes to the specific category of conning people into believing they are dead. Number 6. John Darwin. At the time of his disappearance following what many believe would simply be a relaxing trip on a canoe, everyone from the authorities to even his own children believe that his example had perished tragically in 2002. 5 years later, however, his family was delightfully surprised to see him alive and well. Yet the reasons for his survival were far more sinister. He faked his own death so his wife could falsely claim his insurance pension, with plans all along to re-emerge in the next few years, falsely claiming amnesia with regards to the past 5 years. In 2008, both he and his wife were prosecuted for money laundering, with fines that ended up to be roughly £250,000. Number 7. Alexander I of Russia. In his own time, it was long believed that the Russian emperor died in 1825. However, in recent years, new studies have shown that he had in fact fled and begun a new life as a holy man, Fyodor Kuzmich. Rumours had long persisted, but new analysis of both their respective handwriting and psychological portraits show that there is indeed plenty of evidence to the suggestion that he sought to live his life as a holy man to redeem himself for the many sins he committed while he had been in power. While many individuals admirably seek redemption for their past sins, one could be forgiven for thinking this example's strategy to achieving that goal may have been a bit extreme. Number 8. John Allen. In the 1970s, this man did everything he could to cover up the fact that he had apparently murdered his own wife and children. It took decades for the authority to put the pieces of the puzzle together and realise that he was responsible for these heinous crimes. However, it was later revealed that his marriage had been under false identity, and he had committed several more crimes in the past and faked suicide by drowning to avoid facing consequences for these previous actions in 1966. By the time he did actually die behind bars in 2015, there were still many unanswered questions about his past life, what led him to be a serial criminal, and how he managed to get away with so much deception for such a long period of time. Number 9. Alfred Wooster. While he initially claimed innocence before confessing eventually in a letter he wrote upon being sentenced to death, it's safe to say that his method of avoiding his sentencing in the first place probably didn't help his chances at proving that he was not guilty. Several years after the crime Mr. Wooster committed took place, people are still constantly guessing the identity of the victim of the blazing car murder. However, people do thankfully know who committed the atrocious act of setting the car on fire while the victim was inside, as his initial attempt to flee by faking his death failed miserably. Number 10. Marlon Franklin Rogers. For all the famous murder trials throughout history, it's not every day that one has the chance to testify of their own, under the guise of Connie Franklin. This example was believed to have been tortured and murdered, with a group of individuals being prosecuted for the crime. However, under his real name, this supposed victim appeared to claim that he had been very drunk that night and merely fled and disappeared to avoid marrying his fiancée at the time. Of course, we may never know the full story of what happened in the case of Connie Franklin, as his background before this incident was an escaped resident of the Arkansas State Hospital for Nervous Diseases. Thanks a lot for viewing, and please like, subscribe, share or leave a comment below, and if you would like to receive an alert from us anytime we upload a new video, please hit the bell button below. Cheerio!